Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Avast/AVG. I'm really excited by today's webinar. We've done a lot of webinars with Imbrascale. They're a great partner of ours. We love doing these things. Today's webinar topic is about how to sell ransomware protection to your clients. I've had a chance to look at the deck, so I've seen the content that's here. I'm very excited about the content and excited about some of the slides that are here. But normally when we present a webinar, marketing is speaking secondhand. We hear things, we pass them along. But today we've got two presenters. And the two presenters they're in the trenches. We've got Derek Wood from Imbrascale. Now Derek, he's a veteran of Imbrascale, been there I think around 7 years now. He's the channel marketing guy. He understands the market, he understands the customers, but prior to moving into channel enablement, channel marketing, he was the product manager, so he deeply understands the product, deeply understands the space. So with that kind of knowledge, you can't help but have a great presentation. Timothy Olivagan is a distributor. He's a business development manager in South Africa, and he's the guy that actually sells this. So he knows how to position it. He knows how to talk about it. He knows the value points to bring up. So of course, with his contribution to this webinar, with the content and their engaging styles, I'm really looking forward to this. Now, the webinar's got a couple of different sections to it. We'll hear about who is Imbrascale, what's their solution. We'll hear about Silver Software. And then we'll hear about ransomware and how you position this comprehensive solution. And then there's time for Q&A. Now, at any point during the presentation, this presentation is being recorded. However, if you have a question, please use the Q&A pod. Type in that question. There's 7 different moderators on today's webinar. We'll be fielding those questions as we go through. All of the questions are captured, and they'll be fed back to the different account managers. Now, to get started, we have a quick poll here, and we just want to get a sense of people's understanding of ransomware. So when it comes to ransomware, which of these is you? So if you could have a look at these 3 choices. Yes, a client has been a victim, they've lost critical data. Yes, a client has been a victim and they paid the demand. Or no, you've never heard of this type of security breach. So I'll give you a few seconds to mull those 3 answers over, and then if you could choose that answer, and then we'll present the answers up on the screen. Wow. Derek, I've already positioned you as the expert, so if you could take it away and provide some color on the responses to this poll, please.
Well, the responses are looking pretty good as far as what we would expect. More than half of you have actually gone through ransomware, and some have paid, some have actually lost data. The surprising part is roughly 1/3 have actually said that they haven't experienced ransomware just yet. So that's good for you all, and hopefully we can keep that going forward, and you'll have the answer of yes, and it wasn't a problem. So we're going to start off by just doing a bit about Imbrascale. First, Imbrascale is a cloud software company. That's actually one of the big differentiators from what you'll find in other competitors out in the market, is that we really specialize in cloud software development, and that's what allows us to do things so powerfully, so quickly, and at such an affordable cost. And that's actually one of the reasons that Gartner labeled us as one of the leading visionaries in the disaster recovery space last year, is because not only are we delivering on an excellent feature set that allows people to recover from instances of ransomware or any other disaster very quickly, but also at a fraction of the cost. So it's really changing up the market as far as who can afford to have a proper DR service, which is many more people than before. We were founded in 2011. We're headquartered in Los Angeles, California. We serve over 1,000 partners, and that covers million+ devices and adding every day. And we have data centers all over the world. So wherever we need to have data centers for geographic sovereignty, we do. So South Africa, UK, EU, North America, US, etc. So our mission as a cloud software development firm is really to allow people to recover quickly. We want to eradicate downtime and data loss for businesses of all sizes. We like to break this up into 2 pieces. It's eradicate downtime and data loss. And these are related items, but they are very different in terms of how you want to prepare for those. The reason we focus on downtime and data loss is because when you're a small business, or a business of any size rather, you have enough to worry about without having to be kept up at night thinking that maybe your infrastructure, the things that are allowing your workers in your company to be productive, actually being your downfall. And it's estimated that over 700 billion annually is lost in downtime just in North America alone. And the reason it's such a big figure is because the instance of downtime has a bit of a coattail effect, so it keeps going. And so you have your downtime, and then you're going to be fighting that for months to come. One of the really important things to do, and something that we can help you with after this, is understand what your cost of downtime is. It's a really easy calculation to come up with, and until you know your cost of downtime, it's hard to justify any effort towards avoiding it or being able to limit it as best you can. In addition, where you all come in to help your customers is to understand the different types of downtime causes that there are to fear. Being that the market is called disaster recovery and the service is called disaster recovery, a lot of people immediately think of natural disasters, fires, floods, hurricanes, these sorts of things. But statistically, that's not the biggest part of what you need to worry about. There are multiple areas in which you need to prevent downtime, things like hardware failure, humans being humans and making mistakes, accidental deletion, that sort of thing, software failure, and natural disasters. Now, one of the things that you're also going to help your customers with is navigate the DR landscape, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. There are so many solutions out there. Which is the best one, and what are kind of the differences as you go through the market? First trade-off, as with most any product, is going to be a performance versus cost trade-off. So how much money do you have to spend in relation to how painful is downtime to you and how much do you want to avoid it? So traditionally, it's just this positive relationship, or rather, from your pocket standpoint, negative, but it's a positive relationship is the more you spend, the faster your recovery time will be. And you see this evolution over time from tape backup, cloud, appliance-based backup systems, which is where the SMB market typically ends up maxing out their budgets. And then as you grow, you see better solutions, but usually become quite cost prohibitive: cold site DR, warm site DR, and hot site DR. So our mission in providing DR for everyone was to really come up with a service offering at a point at which we like to call the DRaaS nirvana. That really is setting up a DRaaS solution that is going to be comparable to some of the slowest solutions out there. So from a capital and operational expense standpoint, we actually find that we're saving people money even versus tape systems. We do offer two sets of services to do this, and again, that's to tackle data loss and to tackle downtime. You have InfraScale Cloud Backup for your endpoints, and this is going to help you preserve all your data. If you don't have a lot of critical systems and maybe downtime isn't that expensive for you, maybe you just need to focus on a data loss prevention solution, and that's where Cloud Backup comes in. Or you have a distributed network, and this is the only option you have. Then for your critical systems that you do need to have a true uptime solution for, that's when you have disaster recovery. So this is where you can have an entire network booted into our cloud, stop the downtime, and connect your users to run from the cloud while you work on a production recovery. Our solution guarantees that you can boot any machine up into our cloud in 15 minutes or less and at a fraction of the cost. And again, the reasons that it's important to do this is, one, you want to make sure that you're protecting from things like ransomware. You have mixed environments you need to be able to protect, and you need to have two solutions for data loss, your offsite workers, your remote offices, as well as your central servers. So to continue with some of the trade-offs, a lot of the traditional DR methods would look at all of your data and say, well, we're just really going to focus on these centralized items, your servers with the mission critical items. But everything else, that's all going to be left to their own devices. Kind of a IT policy of good luck. And that's not good, especially as we see phishing attacks using ransomware continuing to expose those endpoints. And you really need to make sure that you have a full solution. And with Infrascale, you do. Again, DR for your central points and backup for your others. The way that we're able to make this so affordable is, again, our expertise in cloud software development. We don't just tack on an AWS server and it's throwing up some data there. It's a proprietary backend that allows the scalability, speed, and affordability that we're offering today. So with a traditional DR system, most of your clients probably couldn't even start the conversation because it would be immediately too expensive. Everything from the capital expense of buying additional hardware, having additional appliances, and then of course the operating expense, which is where a lot of the fall down is, and making sure that a system is properly working. With Infrascale, you don't have that. You have an on-site appliance, and we'll send you out new components as needed. And then the whole recovery environment in our cloud is managed by us. It doesn't cost you anything else. It'll be there when you need to use it in the way that you need to use it, whether that's recovering an entire network, an individual machine, application, or just a couple of files. It's there for you. And all at about a tenth of the cost of what we see going against traditionals. Again, one of the strengths is the breadth of coverage. So it's not just focused on your critical servers. It's very important that your endpoints are protected as well. Those branch offices, traveling workers, whatever the case may be. And you get that solution with us. In addition, this isn't going to be a solution that's going to be limited based on operating systems. So whether you're all virtual, all physical, partial, Linux, Unix, Windows, we can support everything that you have. And this is one of the real powerful parts about the solution, is that you don't need to have 3 or 4 different relationships with different vendors and the know-how to use different products. It's one product that covers everything. In addition, because we are a cloud software company, we built the system to be very flexible. So whether you want to use our cloud or your customer already has a private cloud, or maybe you have a private cloud and it's part of your value add, you can deploy the backend there so that the customer's backups are replicating to really whatever location you want. For those customers that have high security needs, they could do paired appliances between facilities or to their own data center. It's really just whatever they need, we can provide. And again, just to do an illustration of our presence as far as where data can be protected, again, this shows the global expanse of what the Infrascale network allows you to do. So we do serve customers all over the world. We were actually founded in Australia and just moved to LA in 2009, 2010. So you can see that we have North America covered, Europe, South Africa, different parts of Southeast Asia. And that gives you a pretty good overview of what Infrascale can do for you. And now we're going to pass it back to our poll and see what
Dean,
you all
thank you very
are
much.
currently working with.
Here is our next poll question. How confident are you with your disaster recovery abilities? Can you, with your current solution, can you fail over from any disaster within 15 minutes? Are you prepared, but you're unsure of how long it would take to do that? You can recover a single application if needed, or you're not sure, you have an unknown disaster recovery capability. So I'll just give you a few seconds to have a look at those questions. Pick the answer that is closest to how you feel about this. Then we'll show you the results. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A pod that's available on the bottom of the screen. Just double-click on Q&A and type your question in. The number one question we've received so far is, will a copy of this presentation be available? So yes, it will, and that copy of the presentation will be mailed out later on this week. The second most popular question is this session being recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. And the way you would access that recording, the same way that you got here today, you clicked on a link that brought you to the webinar. If you click on that link at any point in the future, if you've already registered, it will take you to the recording. If you have not registered, it will capture your registration information and then show it to you. Phew. Anyway, let's have a look at the results of this poll. And to speak to the results of the poll, we're going to bring in Timothy Olivagan, who is a business development manager with Silver Software. And he's going to give us a bit more color to the responses of this survey.
Thank you for that. Right, so we have 4.2% on can failover from any disaster within 15 minutes. Excellent. So it looks like we have some InfraScale clients on call. 75%, so the vast majority on prepared for disaster but unsure of failover time. Now, this ties into your restore time objective. It becomes very important to recover is great, but if you can't do it within the right time frame, the downtime costs will just continue to rise. And then we have a small percentage we could recover a single application if needed, and then 16.7% that need to really work on drafting a DR recovery plan. All right, so I'll kick things off just talking a bit about Silver Software Distribution and some background information about where we fit into the picture. So we are distributors for some leading software vendors here in South Africa. InfraScale is one of our new partners, so we distribute the full InfraScale range to South African partner base. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Timothy Olivagan, and I'm the Business Development Manager here at Silver Software Distribution. So a bit about the company. Silver Software Distribution was founded in 1991, and since then we've built a trusted reputation over the years, supporting over 5,000 plus IT companies, managed service providers, and value-add resellers across the continent of Africa. We have been Southern African distributors for AVG since 2005, so well over a decade now, very familiar with the market. We have offices located in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Mauritius. And our core objective is to work to research the local cybersecurity market as well as international software trends for our reseller partners. And we look to find the best of the best software around the world. So we only supply industry-leading solutions, the most cutting-edge technology, which we then make available to our local partners. We aim to simplify the distribution channel, and we do this by providing streamlined access to these solutions through, for example, our automated cloud partner portal. So we've mainly been involved in the cybersecurity market up until now, and what we found based on our experience in market research is that although AV security is absolutely essential and is your frontline defense for any ransomware attack, unfortunately, no AV vendor can guarantee a 100% catch rate when it comes to ransomware. And this is because there are thousands of new variants that are being released daily. So mere front-end AV protection, regardless of the brand, is not sufficient without more than just that. So a lot of the traditional online backup and disaster recovery solutions in the SMB space were getting beaten by ransomware. And our goal here was to find a solution which stood up to the challenge. So this led us to InfraScale, and we created the partnership that we have today because our goals are very much aligned, and that's to eradicate downtime and data loss. So this is exciting for us and our value-add resellers because we finally found the solution to the problem that ransomware poses. Now, what we really liked about InfraScale is that they had a pretty similar core business value, which is to help businesses of all sizes and allow those newer companies an easier get-up-and-go process. So in terms of leveraging the cloud, in order to provide what was exclusively an enterprise-grade solution, which wasn't viable for smaller companies due to price, and making this available to the SMB space at a more reasonable price point, but with the same enterprise-grade technology. Of course, everybody's affected by ransomware, and everybody needs a contingency plan. So we understand the importance of guarding against data loss. In terms of our end-user base, Silver Software Distribution works with many long-standing high-profile clients, including local, provincial, and national government, Seacom Telecoms, the South African National Defence Force, or SANDF, and the Armaments Corporation of South Africa, Armscor, as well as the SA Legion of Military Veterans. So of course, security is extremely important for these institutions. We're also engaged in a decade-long partnership with the local governing body of the IT industry here in South Africa called IITPSA, otherwise referred to as the Institute of Information Technology Professionals of South Africa. Right, so that pretty much covers where we are, where we're coming from, and today I'll be discussing the prevalent ransomware pandemic we see sweeping the globe at an exponential rate. I'll then discuss our approach to adequately guard against these ransomware attacks, and specifically focus on our three-stage approach to ransomware protection. So first off, the genuine need on the ransomware protection front alone is there. There's undoubtedly a gap in the market, and IT companies need to react. The ransomware market is now a $1 billion market, and it's growing significantly. When you consider operational downtime after a ransomware attack, the increased staff and other resources such as replacement computer systems required to resolve the problem, ransomware is actually costing businesses closer to $75 billion per year globally. Nobody is immune. In fact, 92% of surveyed IT firms reported attacks on their clients at some point. So ransomware attacks on individuals have doubled, and ransomware attacks on businesses have actually tripled in 2016 alone. In fact, and this is quite a scary figure, a company gets hit with ransomware every 40 seconds, and that's a stark rise when you consider that these attacks were occurring only once every 2 minutes in Q1 of 2016. They really are on the rise. Sadly, 2017 is projected to be even worse, and most SMBs need experts to lead them to safety. So this ties into the fact that 72% of ransomware victims were unable to access their data for 2 or more days. Some of the more common variants of ransomware on the scene these days, you've probably heard of them, include Locky, CryptoLocker ransomware, Cerber, there's Ransom32 as well, which can be used to target computers running not only Windows operating systems, but also Mac OS X and Linux too. And then there are other more sneaky variants such as the JS-Fake, BSOD, and Spora. Now Spora is particularly interesting because they're now offering this ransomware as a service. So I've taken a screenshot of the Spora ransomware as a service here. You can see it on screen there. As you can see, they have a nice victim user interface. They've actually become so audacious that they even go so far as to have an online portal with a built-in live chat support feed. Ridiculous. These are professional firms developing high-budget automated software that need to be taken seriously. So unfortunately, due to the advent of high-speed encryption, so the evolution of RSA 1024 and EAS 256, it's made it easier for bad actors to encrypt more files faster. So clearly ransomware is not going anywhere. On the contrary, ransomware attacks are growing exponentially now that ransomware is available as a service. And people are really beginning to cotton on to the fact that there is good, untraceable money to be made in the ransomware space. These ransomware developers and beneficiaries have a very shortened cycle of return on investment, which explains why over 93% of all phishing attacks contain ransomware. And we see that nearly the entire organized cybercrime market has shifted to ransomware because of how successful it is. So these are large organized crime units who operate like any business would, except on the wrong side of the law. They have campaign tracking, they have quotas, they have referrals, they have industry-specific targeting methods. On that point, they mainly target businesses who will be unable to react and have no choice but to pay out the ransom. So SMBs, statistically about 35% of the SMB market still doesn't have any type of backup in place, and the remaining 65% that do likely have a very traditional backup, which is something that ransomware developers can build a product around. They also target companies with a high pain point for downtime. So these are your industrial services, your medical facilities, financial services, government agencies, and the like. And it seems like it's come on as ransomware is kind of an avalanche of nothing you can do. And that's how it grew over 6,000% in less than a year. But we do have a solution for you. And before I get into the nuances of that solution, or rather combined solutions to be more accurate, I want to tell you about a nightmare case. I was having a conversation recently with a gentleman by the name of David, who manages the IT systems for a financial institution here in South Africa, and they're a nationwide credit provider. Now, unfortunately, the bank didn't have Infrascale in place, so unfortunately, David's story doesn't have a happy ending. Although they had traditional backups, they had the traditional backup systems running full backups on their mail server. They also ran incremental backups throughout the week, and then, of course, online backups for the rest. But the gist is that they got hit by ransomware, and what they thought was an adequate online backup got encrypted as well, and they were unable to recover enough information to avoid paying out the ransom. So as you can imagine, being a regulated financial institution and all, this brought operations to a complete halt, and they had to close up shop across their 34 branches nationwide. So they were hemorrhaging money every second that their staff weren't able to service clients. The ransom amount was 500,000 Rand, so 500,000 ZAR, and they had no choice but to pay up. Interestingly, another fear of theirs was that in terms of South African privacy law, recent privacy legislation was enacted. There's an act that recently got promulgated called the Protection of Private Information Act, otherwise referred to as POPI here in SA. You would know about it. It places a duty on all companies to take reasonable steps to ensure that their clients' private information remains private. Now, if companies do not ensure sufficient measures are taken to protect that sensitive client data, the company will be held liable for not meeting their corporate responsibility obligations. So this was a concern of theirs as well. Anyway, I digress. So they paid the 500,000 ransom to get their data back. Now, decryption is not immediate. You know, a lot of these variants require a file-by-file decryption process. Some allow you to select entire directories. Some allow you to select file-by-file. So you actually hope that if you do get hit by ransomware, as Derek put it, that you get hit by a more professional variant that's going to make the experience better, like you see with Spora. If you don't have a proper backup and DL solution in place, that is. Otherwise, it can be a drawn-out process and take quite a long time just to go through the payment method alone, opening and funding a Bitcoin account and so on. So here's the kicker. They paid the 500,000 Rand ransom. They then received only half of their data back, and a message from the hackers demanding another 800,000 Rand if they wanted the other half of their data back. True story, frightening stuff. So I'm going to get into the solution. How do we protect our clients from this? We have a three-element approach to ransomware mitigation, and the three elements are as follows. Firstly, AVG or Avast antivirus protection as a frontline defense is non-negotiable. It's absolutely crucial. You need to have that in place. This is then used in conjunction with proactive network monitoring, or RMM, which I'll get into a bit later. And thirdly, a DRAS solution. And this will be your saving grace in the worst case scenario event of a successful ransomware attack. So in this case, Infrascale DRAS. And the last element is particularly important if you're looking to truly give your clients peace of mind. And we do that by guaranteeing that in no event will any variant of ransomware bring operations to a complete halt for longer than 15 minutes. So I'll dive into each of these three elements briefly. As a starting point, we highly recommend top echelon AVG or Avast corporate security as front-end protection, both at the workstation level and the server level. Of course, the soon-to-be released hybrid products will simplify this offering under one product range. So Avast and AVG Business Editions utilize a multi-layered approach to detecting and eliminating ransomware. This is straight from the latest AVG ransomware lab note. So files pass through several layers of inspection and testing to identify malware. First, the files are compared to any known variants in a malware database. Both the metadata and the content of the files are analyzed. Then files are tested in an emulator, a virtual machine, where it can do no harm to your real PC. And now that the file is running, its behavior is assessed using a variety of techniques, including artificial intelligence algorithms. We have behavioral assessments, which occur both in the AVG application itself and in the cloud, but they all work together behind the scenes in real time to determine whether a file is malicious. If the file is determined to be malware, it is quarantined, and AVG's Crowd Intelligence feature updates all AVG user software. So that's a built-in tech that's crucial to have in place. Additional expertise we offer here at Silver Software Distribution include providing education and training and insights to our reseller partners, insight into recent cybersecurity developments, and advising on general industry best practices concerning ransomware mitigation. So to this end, based on our experience with ransomware, we advise clients on the optimal configuration of their AV security, such as setting aggressive anti-spam settings, enabling thorough scanning using heuristics, and also checking the box to report files containing macros, which isn't set by default, but speaks to protecting against ransomware. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, ransomware usually comes in the form of an infected email attachment that contains the dropper. It's usually a Word document or PDF, so general end users just don't think that they would be malicious. And once you open that Word document, it asks if you want to enable macros. And once they click enable macros, it actually runs a script to download the ransomware. So those settings are recommended. You might have seen the ransomware survival webinars hosted by AVG recently. They've done an entire ransomware survival campaign. And they also released 6 free decryption tools for the more common variants. But unfortunately, front-end security alone won't cut it. That's just the reality of the situation. We're dealing with highly sophisticated software here backed by millions of dollars spent on research and development. So this is truly an unprecedented era for cybersecurity, and IT companies need to adapt and respond accordingly. IT companies, these businesses will need the right tools for the job if they intend on winning this war, and that brings me to the second layer of defense, and that is AVG Managed Workplace Network Monitoring. I've got a slide up here with the PSA and CRM integrations and the technical ecosystems that are also integrated. RMM obviously goes way beyond mere security. It's actually the new tool of the IT trade because it enables scalability, essentially allowing IT companies to better service more clients with fewer resources. We understand that not all traditional break-fix VARs have transitioned to the MSP model yet, but we know that proactive RMM is undoubtedly the way forward and the future of the IT industry. It's accepted that traditional break-fix is antiquated and fast becoming obsolete, according to industry sentiment. So you might be wondering why all the hype around RMM, and that's a fair question. Over the last few years, we've seen a global shift in the IT industry towards cloud-managed services, and the reason is simple. The traditional break-fix IT model is perceived by clients, especially your SMB and enterprise clients, as inherently unreliable, and by nature it destroys the credibility of IT service providers. This is because the traditional break-fix model is reactive as opposed to proactive, and when it comes to ransomware, you're going to need a proactive approach. This is highly sophisticated malware, and it's looking for vulnerabilities in your client's outdated operating systems. It's looking for holes in different applications, holes in firewalls, transmission protocols. We actually recently had a client who was hit by ransomware and discovered that the variant infiltrated and affected their network by hijacking their PABX system. So even Internet of Things is leading to unforeseen vulnerabilities in network infrastructure and acting as gateways to infection. For this reason, we also aim to train up our partners and by extension their end users on how to best guard against ransomware attacks, such as ensuring that they have group policies in place with solid anti-spam settings in order to avoid phishing attempts and a newly coined term, whaling attempts, which means chasing after enterprise, those big fish. So companies need to, at all times, ensure that their security software is up to date, that their operating systems all have the latest service packs, ensure that the latest Microsoft security patches are deployed without delay. It's very important to keep your patches up to date. This can't be stressed enough, and so on. So this is where network monitoring RMM comes into play, because all of this is conveniently automated through preloaded scripting with no manual intervention required from the end user or MSP. So that leaves no room for security vulnerabilities due to human error or oversight. Of course, AVG Managed Workplace offers advanced scripting straight out the box, which is based on proprietary industry best practices. So AVG Managed Workplace allows for all your clients' IT assets across their various networks to be proactively managed behind a single pane of glass. So this platform is going to be your eyes and ears on the ground when it comes to dealing with the ransomware scenario. MSPs will also find the network audit report and the security reports super helpful when it comes to analyzing MBSA scans, when it comes to identifying security flaws and standardizing security policy. So a point that I want to mention here is InfraScale directly integrates with Managed Workplace. So we offer InfraScale Online Backup as an optional add-on with Managed Workplace. However, we highly suggest that you advise clients to take this as a mandatory add-on. And we push this integrated online backup as a mandatory add-on in order to preserve the profit margins of these partners. And I'll elaborate on this a bit later in my bit about whether ransomware will force you to fire your clients. So it's important to keep in mind that AVG Managed Workplace offers cloud backup and not DRAS. So it's one thing to recover encrypted files, but when you have to rebuild a SQL database after it gets encrypted, for example, this is not easy to do fast without a DRAS solution. So the message we try to get across here is the integrated Managed Workplace backup solution helps in the battle against data loss, and DRAS helps in the battle against downtime. So essentially both are necessary. In terms of positioning InfraScale, and this is really why we chose InfraScale as a backup and DR partner, traditional approaches to backup and DR simply don't work against ransomware. This outdated backup and DR tech was around before these variants of ransomware were developed. So of course, as you can imagine, new strings of ransomware were developed with those traditional approaches in mind, and they build products around that. We actually have an upcoming webinar ourselves for the software distribution. We had one previously too, specifically focusing on how ransomware is beating traditional backup security and backup systems, unlike InfraScale DRAS solution, however, which doesn't get beaten by ransomware. So I'll explain. See, if backup and or DR files are stored on a network accessible drive, such as the nightmare case that I just described, the ransomware viruses will be able to locate them. Traditional backups are going to run application, file, or bare metal level backups to some network storage, and that storage is going to be accessible to the network administrator. If that's the case, then your backups are susceptible to ransomware, and they're being targeted. And being targeted can mean either the backups are just being removed altogether, like what Spora does, or that they're actually being encrypted themselves, like with the nightmare case. So you wouldn't even have the option to recover and see if the malware is there. The file will just be useless until you pay out the ransom and decrypt. Now, when it comes to the InfraScale appliance, you're not actually susceptible from a local backup standpoint because the appliance is locked down. The storage that InfraScale uses to store the backup and DR information is not open to the network because it's sitting on a proprietary code which enables efficient replication to the cloud and doing recoveries. So your local data is safe with InfraScale. Alternatively, your only other option is to have your data go off-site because naturally the ransomware won't be able to transcend your network into the cloud and ruin everything there. So with that, I'll pass over to Derek to explain a typical failover scenario and how that works getting you back up and running in a disaster case. Derek?
Thanks. And it's a good point. And when it comes to planning for risks, a formal risk management plan, you would be listing out your preventative measures, things to stop the bad things from happening, like your security services, user training, and this. And then you have to have, in addition to prevention, what are your options if prevention isn't 100%, which in the case of ransomware, it's not. And that's where our complete solution comes in. So in your network, you're going to have users, or out of your network. They're going to be doing work on relying upon different servers, whether it's a file server, email server, a customer application server, and a web server, etc. Suddenly, if there's an outage, whether it's ransomware or other, they're going to get a bunch of errors and they're going to be completely out of work. So downtime for that user has begun. If it's a server issue, then downtime for the whole business has begun. And so your calculation of losses begin right at that moment. The first thing that you would look to do is say, okay, well, let's go to our local backups. They're on site. We know where they are. We can recover from there. But in the case of ransomware and the nightmare scenario that Tim went through, that may not be an option. And so you need to be able to go to an offsite backup. Now, in a backup scenario, that would mean a lot of steps coming back down, which we're going to cover in just a minute. But with the InfraScale DR option, you're replicating to a recovery environment. So you'd be able to recover and virtualize all those machines in the cloud and then reconnect your users so that they can begin being productive again, thus ending your downtime ticker. This is great because it means your business that you're serving is going to be losing less money. And it also means that you can take your time to do a proper production recovery. I'm sure many of you have gone through recovery scenarios, big and small, where the priority is speed rather than quality or the way it should be. And you have to make a bunch of notes and you go back later. This adds a lot of room for error, and oftentimes those temporary workarounds end up staying in place for months and even years, and some just never get changed until something else bad goes on. So when you're looking at a disaster recovery versus a backup solution in terms of the recovery time, both solutions are going to help keep your data. So data loss is covered by both. But in terms of downtime, you see that there's a significant difference. So backup systems are inherently concerned with and end their concern with your data. So you see these 8 steps, and most of the steps are after you've actually recovered the data, and it has nothing to do with the backup service at all. With disaster recovery, you have much fewer steps, which means less room for error and faster. And it ends with having a fully working environment, whether it's a machine or an entire network, ready for you to plug in users. So with the backup scenario, if we go into it a little bit more detailed, let's say we're recovering a database, which is what this is showing. The first thing you need to do after you determine the date and time of infection, and you determine which backups you might want to recover from as far as which versions, the first thing you need to do before you can even attempt that is you need to have some sort of environment to recover to. So do you have extra hardware on site for this case? That's extra expenses, extra operational expenses as well. You have to make sure that hardware is still running properly and is able to handle any updates on your production infrastructure. And then once you've configured that hardware to accept a download, then you hope that the version that you've selected is going to be okay. So if ransomware has infected your database, you're going to have backups potentially that are also no good. And you may have to go back in time a couple of hours or a couple of days, depending on how often you're running your backups. If you recover a bad version that isn't going to work for you, you've lost out on a good number of hours that you've already put work into. In the draft scenario, we're talking about the difference of minutes. So you right-click and boot, machine's up and running in a few minutes, and you can see if it's a valid point of recovery or not. If it's not, then you right-click the next version and you do the same thing. And so if there's any type of complication, the disaster recovery solution, being that it's focused on uptime for an entire business or machine rather than just the data, is going to be much faster and much more effective in terms of eliminating downtime. Now, we have a good example from one of our customers up in upstate New York, actually a partner of ours. And they had 2 different customers get hit with ransomware the same week. The first customer to get hit did not have the InfraScale solution in place, but they did have backups and they did have security, firewalls, antivirus, all this sort of thing. Their backups were running from their databases and their servers to a network location, and their backups were encrypted. So when the MSP went in to go recover, they couldn't. They even had a hard time just finding the point of penetration. So at which point did the virus even come into the network and start encrypting? That took them a good amount of time. When all was said and done, it took them about 2 weeks to get fully up and running. and they spent over 320 man hours during this whole event. And probably about 250 of it were technical man hours, and the remainder were account management, ownership, and it was just a very expensive and long drawn-out process with a lot of stress. Their second customer that got hit with ransomware did have InfraScale in place. One technician, 1 hour, everything was back up and running, and as if nothing happened, right? A short lunch break. So when we were actually talking with this partner, one of the things I asked was, for those 320 man hours, were you able to charge, or did you charge for any of those? And they said, absolutely not. How could we possibly charge someone that had a managed service package for 300 man hours when we were just trying to make sure their business was going to survive, and we're still trying to make sure their business is going to survive. And so it really brought up the question of, can a partner providing technical services afford to have customers that aren't prepared for ransomware? Because, with IT services, you really only are as capable as the tools you have to use, right? Right tool for the right job. Everyone knows this mantra. If your customers don't have the right tool for the right job, it's not just going to be them that suffers. It's also going to be you in terms of time you spend. So even if that business survives, your margin on that business has been completely eaten up. And that's something that you're going to have to address from really a global services perspective of, what's required and what's not and what's optional when you onboard new customers. And it really begs the question, will ransomware force you to fire your customers? And I'll let Tim take it from here.
Thanks for that, Derek. Yeah, it ties in quite nicely, and that's the point I just want to elaborate on a bit further. So this kind of avoidable situation ties into an article that InfraScale published recently entitled, "Will Ransomware Force You to Fire Your Customers?" And the logic behind this sentiment is ransomware not only impacts the customer infected, but it also imposes a heavy tax on the MSPs that serve them. And that's why MSPs need to reevaluate their role with their clients and mandate certain data protection processes so that they don't risk their own financial well-being. A poor disaster recovery solution can actually force IT professionals to spend collective man weeks instead of mere hours to resolve the problem, and the crux is it's often at a loss to the IT company. In fact, given the resources expended, usually it would probably take in the region of a year of services to their clients just to break even with their clients. And that's assuming they remain customers after the ransomware episode even. Hence, it's time for a rethink. It's time to mandate that clients adopt DRaaS as part of their monthly subscription. Each customer should be set up so they can quickly fail over systems and so they can quickly recover data in the event of a server outage or a ransomware infection, because ultimately you will be held accountable and your business's reputation tarnished if your clients don't adhere to your recommendations or didn't heed your warning. And that's where the problem comes in. So the economics dictate that IT professionals actually take a hard look at their client portfolio, and they can't afford to have ransomware susceptible customers risk their own financial future. And this just might mean firing a few customers who are unwilling to adopt DR best practices. That's the point we really want to drive home there. Speak to a lot of partners on a daily basis.
No one wins and I told you so.
Exactly right. No one wins and I told you so situation, 100%. So making a case for DRaaS, InfraScale DRaaS in particular. So the question becomes, why InfraScale and not another DRaaS solution? Well, firstly, the reason we chose InfraScale is because our missions are very much aligned, being to eradicate downtime and data loss, but it's the way they do it. There is no daylight between us in terms of our shared ethos of simplicity. Super straightforward, super user-friendly, absolutely no complexities. I'll give you some examples. InfraScale's push-button failover is just magic. Their drag-and-drop recovery orchestration is also phenomenal. And InfraScale central deployment really simplifies things. So all system components can be deployed directly from the InfraScale dashboard. System configuration and management can also be performed centrally. Secondly, for their key differentiators, So this is very important for us in terms of market scope, and that was Infrascale's flexibility. I mean, we service a broad range of partners who have an even broader range of end users, and so flexibility is very important. You don't want to be turning away business because it's not compatible with certain operating systems, for example. So what I mean by this is Infrascale's ability to deploy in any form, be it physical or virtual, store in any cloud, whether it's private, public, or third party, recover anything from a single file or a single email to the entire IT infrastructure with applications, SQL databases, you name it, absolutely everything. Boot anywhere, they can fail back any systems, back up any devices, and support any operating systems. Infrascale also stands out in the DRaaS space in some notable ways, which I just want to mention briefly. In terms of protected systems, the coverage includes physical servers, so whether it's Windows, Linux, or Unix, virtual servers at a hypervisor level, so VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM, workstations and laptops, of course, whether it's Windows or Mac, mobile devices, so iOS and Android. There's the cloud-to-cloud protection of software as a service apps, so that's your Office 365, your Salesforce, your G Suite. Infrastructure as a service as well, fully compatible. So the IaaS workloads, which is your Azure and AWS. Then, of course, the 15-minute failover. And I think this is what got Infrascale to the Magic Quadrant of the Gartner report, because Infrascale offers industry-leading 15-minute SLA for failover. And in reality, the average recovery time is closer to about 70 seconds. They also publish benchmarks, so Infrascale publish actual restore time objectives achieved by customers and partners via failover histogram. So this is real empirical objective evidence to refer clients to. Orchestration provides runbooks, custom scripting, which automates the orchestration process. Like I mentioned, there's a drag and drop orchestration interface with application, scripting, sequencing, and this really just makes the recovery process effortless. The network is rebuilt automatically and on the fly using software-defined networking technology. So you can recreate switches, routers, subnets, and software, and it rebuilds a complete replica of the on-premise data center in the cloud. Absolutely nothing additional that you have to recover or install separately. It's a clean copy. Infrascale offers a true subscription pricing model too, which is nice. So all the hardware, software, network, support, onboarding, and cloud services are all included in one simple pricing model without any extra costs. Infrascale also offers an all-you-can-eat pricing model with unlimited DR testing and events, which Derek will get into a bit later. Unlimited version history too, so you can restore critical files from a clean backup. Then, of course, the military-grade double-blind encryption. We're fighting encryption with encryption here. And finally, the ransomware anomaly detection, which is quite poignant. Infrascale will be able to determine, okay, given the average amount of files that are modified usually, and the rate that files are modified when you get hit by ransomware, it's fairly obvious that you have a problem that needs to be addressed. So just quickly, I know we're running out of time here. In terms of pricing model, for both the cloud backup and DRaaS appliance, the solutions are priced per terabyte per annum. The DRaaS appliance requires a once-off fee, and this failover appliance comes with a sizing sheet to help you determine the necessary hardware requirements for your client-specific storage needs. We offer a monthly or quarterly billing option. As smaller partners would start off with a terabyte and then apportion the backup space out to various clients. The pricing in front of you is end user MSRP. Of course, partners receive their reseller margin off of this end user price. So a common objective may be that it's too expensive. But in reality, price-wise, Infrascale is usually 30% to 40% less than an off-site backup solution when you include operational and capital expenses. So how you should respond to that first step is always understanding the risk of data loss and downtime along with the associated costs. That's really what we're mitigating here. So factoring in the individual restore time objective, I mean, you can't possibly justify a budget if you don't even know what your risk is. So In reality, the solution ends up paying for itself fast. An analogy is that the DRAS solution is somewhat of an insurance policy, although most insurance policies don't pay for themselves in a single use, and that's the difference. So this is the only insurance policy where you'll get immediate ROI for years of service, even if you only use it once. And I mean, it's not just in a situation of full-blown ransomware attack. My laptop crashed this morning, for example. If it wasn't for Infrascale, I wouldn't have been able to just quickly boot up a VM. I would have been lost. So partners often ask me how you sell this to prospects and clients. We've gone through a lot of the features, so that of course ties in. But it really comes down to you have to show that the price you're asking for is a drop in the bucket compared to the value that it delivers. This is a function of product quality. Luckily, disaster recovery has objective empirical evidence of ROI in terms of the time and money saved from drastically reducing downtime and the associated costs. So put simply, it's an enterprise-grade DRAS solution, and by that token, it's far more valuable than the price that you're charging for it, rather, which makes it easy to sell. So again, a starting point, one of the most important things that you can help your customers understand is to help them understand what their total cost of downtime is. And many businesses are not fully documented and aware of what their cost of downtime is. But this is an easy figure to come up with and something Infrascale can help partners calculate, and they become frighteningly aware of their cost of downtime in an emergency disaster situation. By that stage, it's too late. So some forethought is crucial. This is important because it factors in the ROI decision, and this is the basis for determining what the proper backup and disaster recovery solution is for your client-specific needs. As Derek mentioned, the other top causes of downtime besides the ransomware outbreak, which all fall under the broad term disaster, and that includes hardware failure, human error, often human error, software failure, and a small percentage attributable to natural disasters. So another key factor is the value of your data and the cost of the alternative to get your data back, which may be the amount of the ransom. The final reason that a lot of people still find themselves paying out a ransom despite having a backup or DR solution is because they don't have a proper DR plan in place. And by proper DR plan, I mean meeting their restore time objective, which is how long their business can afford to be down before they need to do whatever it takes. So that brings me to my final point. Having a DR plan in place is not enough if your DR plan falls short of your restore time objective. So that 15-minute SLA is going to work wonders for you. Statistically, 80% of businesses that go down for 3 to 5 days or longer and don't recover their data back after the downtime ends do not survive the next 12 months. And that's scary stuff. And again, that speaks to the ripple effect that downtime and data loss has on a business. For the two tracks Infrascale offers, on the one hand, cloud backup total downtime is usually in the region of 4 to 5 hours. And on the other hand, DRAS realistically is around 1 to 2 minutes only. And of course, they have the 15-minute failover guarantee, and all of this at a fraction of the cost without all the payoffs. There are also some other ways to make money with Infrascale, and I'm going to hand over to Derek again to just explain further and elaborate on those other ways.
All right, and this is going to close us up, but some of the ways that a fast and reliable disaster recovery solution helps you make money is, one, ransomware audits. You could even just do any type of disaster recovery audit. So when you have a new customer or prospect, you just go through their systems and you say, okay, in the case of ransomware, your local backups are no longer available, your endpoints are down, your servers are down. What can you do? And oftentimes, the answer is not going to be very much, and they're going to have to pay out the ransom. So that gives you a really nice foot in to say, well, let's talk about what we can do for you. This goes into security audits the same type of way. One of the best ways to create an opportunity for yourself is to create doubt in what is already in place. You should start with kind of a downtime loss calculation so that you can show some figures behind the risk that you're describing. And then when it comes to DR failover and testing, now test recoveries are typically something that only the IT service provider or MSP will do and mostly as a kind of cover all your bases and make sure that you're okay. Your customer is going to expect that things are going to work if they're paying for it. But now, with a failover using, say, boot orchestration, where you can automate the boot of an entire network, so you can have boot groups for your DNS server, then you can put in your primary servers like your application database and mail server, and then once those are up, you put in another group to have your tertiary servers, your file server and your web server booted up. So you can boot an entire network with a single click of a button. This means that you can do more specific use case testing, which means that your solution is going to be more well tested, verified by both you and your customer, and it provides a lot more value. With our system, you could do full site recoveries every month and still spend less time on a full site recovery with, say, an old tape system, or with most other DR systems that you only do maybe once a year because no one's paying you for it and it's very timely and expensive. So having a very fast solution helps not only your customers protected from instances of downtime, but it helps you provide more value to your customers. And if you're wondering, well, we don't really have these templates built out, that's one of the things about coming on as a partner is we have this collateral, so you don't have to start at ground zero. You can actually hit the ground running because we have templates, DR evaluation sheets, ebooks, all sorts of collateral to help you sell to your customers. And with that, we'll end up with our final poll.
Thank you very much, Derek. Thank you very much, Timothy. This is Andrew Miller again. If you'd like to know more about the InfoScale disaster recovery, cloud backup, or the combination, please let us know here. It's quicker than you actually sending us an email. Just tag it here and we'll get back to you. I'm not actually going to show the results of how many people want more questions. If you do have further questions, please use the Q&A pod. Let us know what your questions are. If you want more information, ask for it in the Q&A pod. If you want to schedule a demo, ask for it in the Q&A pod. This presentation has been recorded, and as I said, you can get the same presentation by following the link that brought you here today. Also, the presentation is going to be sent out to you. Both Derek and Timothy presented a wealth of information that is also captured in the notes of the presentation. So we're 2 minutes over, but I'm hoping that you saw the value. I certainly made a full page of notes here. So thank you very much, and I'll bring the webinar to a close. Any other questions from the audience, please type them into the Q&A pod so they'll be captured so we can follow up independently. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.